Everybody. Welcome to Willows Bend. I'm your host, Donna Gorton. So today we are on episode number 121. Holy cow. Little girl's making her appearance to say hi. My cat, for anyone who doesn't know her. So today we're going to be talking about the Druids and who they were and get all into that history of what is known. Before we start, I'm going to throw out, we don't allow any negativity, drama, etc. Come on over here. Come on. You got to move, baby. Move, move, move. Thank you. Sorry, guys. Any interruptions, any negativity. And I know that everybody likes me to do a circle of protection against any negativity, bad energy, bad juju, whatever you want to call it. So let's get that out of the way first. And please forgive me, I have a Tums in my mouth. I just got hit with a wave of nauseousness. I don't know why, but hopefully it's nothing. It's just passing, but just in case. Okay. So at this stage, I cast a circle of protection around all who are in my chat, in my Facebook group, Willows Bend. Yep, fire it up, Sandy. That nothing negative or anyone with ill will or ill intent is allowed to enter that space. And this applies to anyone who will watch the video after the fact and or is listening out there via radio through Soma Fusion Network. Now we are on Facebook, we are on YouTube, pretty well all social media sites, as well as broadcast through radio worldwide, which is pretty awesome. So just if you have any issues viewing it on Facebook or in my Facebook group, Willows Bend, you can go to YouTube and watch it there, etc. So, but I monitor the chat in my group. So a big welcome to everybody in chat. So let me stage my stones real quick of all energies except for their own, that they may work with mine. Yes, to you too, little girl, and Jake as well. They're all energies except for your own. So I will it, so mote it be, and may that protection too follow each and every one of you outside of the group, which seems to be working because you've all been staying pretty well and healthy, so that's a positive. So you guys are very, very welcome. So big welcome again to everybody who's watching in my group, Sandy and Aaron, Chris, Tanya, Sandy number 2, there's Tanya again. I don't see all of you yet, but I can scroll back, but you know what I mean. Big, huge hello to everybody. Lots of love. So the Druids, let's get started with that. So who were the Druids? Now, there's a lot that isn't known about them because there literally is no remaining documents or otherwise from them that is in existence or known to be in existence today. But what we do know, hey Renee, is a Druid was a member of the high-ranking class in ancient Celtic cultures. Now, the Celts were a collection of Indo-European people, but their spread and origins are still up for debate as far as just how far-reaching that their population went. Obviously, we know it was in Ireland and amongst the Gaelic people and so forth, but again, that's kind of seems to be their root as far as history goes. So Druids were political advisors. They were medical professionals, legal authorities, religious leaders, adjudicators, which are like judges in criminal cases type of situation, where they could help decide and or enforce the law in different situations. And as well as lore keepers, which is, passing down oral histories of what had gone on amongst them, etc. they left no written account, although they were reported to be quite literate and very, very focused on, the on knowledge, of the obtaining of knowledge, of the passing on of knowledge, regardless of like what form it was in, philosophy, it could be religious studies, so forth. So we're going to dive into all of that. The earliest known reference to the Druids dates to the 4th century BCE. And for those unfamiliar with the newer dating system, archaeologically speaking, BCE is kind of replaces a like B kind of replaces the like what was it? So AD BC. So now it's BCE, meaning before current era. So they're kind of just taking out the before Christ part of that equation now and how they calculate it. So CE is current era, BCE is before current era. So they get back to the 4th century BCE, meaning 400 years before when we started counting the years from year 0, so 400 years before that. So Druids appeared in some medieval stories from Christianized Ireland. They were largely shown as, in that context anyway, as being sorcerers who opposed the community of Christianity as a whole. Like they really just they wanted to retain their right to their own beliefs and not have it dictated to them. And there was a Celtic revival also known as the Celtic Twilight during the 18th and 19th century, whereby fraternal and neo-pagan groups founded an idea about the ancient Druids, which we're going to get into later in the show. But so that leads into neo-Druidism, which is like modern spiritual versions of it, and a more modern or spiritual religious movement that promotes connectivity, harmony, and a reverence for the natural world. And many popular notions of the Druids are actually based on information from the 18th century scholars. Hi, Kim. I see you in there. And Joe, welcome. Long time no see. So, history of the word. I just got kicked out of Facebook on my tablet I'm watching chat on, so, oh, you difficult thing. Let's see. The update might have finished, and that could be the problem. Go. We'll reload it, no biggie. So, history of the word druid. The word druid really comes from other languages and people. It ultimately can be taken back to the Proto-Indo-European, or PIE for short, which is a theorized ancestor to other languages, although there's no direct record of this language existing. It's suspected to have existed, and it dates back to ancient Irish and Welsh traditions of speech. But again, it's kind of just guessed that is what they originally spoke, being that they were Indo-Irish related people. So 1 second here, and I'm going to open up my group back on Facebook since I got booted. Like I said, I'm guessing it's because this tablet was updating, and once the update finished, well, hey, let's shut down everything that's open. So forgive me for a second here while I try to get it to cooperate so I can get my chat back again. And for those who are listening on radio while this is happening, I do have the Facebook group called the Willows Bend, and it's a very active group with a lovely group of people. We're more like family in there, and all my shows get posted in there. It's a private group, but anyone is welcome to join as long as they don't bring drama in with them. But that's one way to find me, is in there. So that's what I was opening the chat to, is my group. Oh, well, a big shout out to Gina Modler, who's sick. And sorry that she is sick, and hopefully she will be feeling better. I know she's not been feeling well for the last week, so yeah. Um, okay, so the Druidic practices and their doctrines, what are they? So the sources for the following are by ancient and medieval writers, as the Druids again had no written language of their own that is known. So it gives some idea, at least, of who they were, what they were, and the religious and social roles involved with being a Druid, basically. And of course, one has to keep in mind with all of these is that it's going to be from the point of view of the person writing it, and whatever other culture they may have existed in, whatever other uh, religious connotations they may carry themselves with things, they're going to have that lilt to whatever was written about the Druids. So just as something to keep in mind with any ancient documentation about any ancient people is that whoever is going to be documenting it, it's going to be from their point of view. So that said, um, yes, little girl, why don't you relax, honey? Yes, my little chat box, come over here and settle down. So both the Greco-Roman and vernacular, which is the language indigenous to a place, Druids played an important part in Celtic society. Now, there was a big account that a lot of current knowledge was taken regarding the Druids, who they were and their structure, came actually surprisingly, well, this surprised me. Yes, this little girl, she's being attention seeking now, which she doesn't typically do now, but um, so Julius Caesar, he was the one who wrote about, he wasn't writing it just to write about them. He was giving basically a written report of the Gaelic Wars, and in there was included a lot of information about the Druids, but again from his perspective. But it's the I think that where the big, at least in the research I did, the biggest chunk of information that's thought to be known about them came from his writings. So Julius Caesar, he said that they were one of the two most important social groups in the region and were responsible for organizing. What did they organize? Let's see. Worship, sacrifices, divination, and judicial procedures in Gaulish, British, and Irish politics and policies. Caesar said that they were exempt from payment of taxes, military service, and had power to excommunicate people from the religious festivals, making them then social outcasts, because that was a very big part of their social structure, was attending the social festivals and stuff. Amanda says the Druids passed down the teaching and practices via mouth. They did this to protect their ways. The Druid were observed by some Greeks like Caesar. This is why there aren't very many accounts. See more of their society. Right. Hey, Ramona, welcome. So it very much is akin to American indigenous people and how they handled their culture. It was passed down verbally and through storytelling and lore keeping, and that's where there was no written record because of a lot of that. That was how it was handled. So yes, they mirrored that very much. Other people did write about them besides Caesar, but the biggest chunk of knowledge about them comes from him. So now there was another person, Pomponius Mela, who was the earliest Roman geographer who died circa 45 CE, which is current era. He said that the Druids' instruction was secret and took place in secret forests and caves. Now, a lot of this, I view it as very similar to witches and how they used to have to practice for the sake of protecting their lives, because if it was found that you were doing that sort of work or grouping together to, practice your beliefs, you could be persecuted and aka killed for that. So it would be done secretively because they had to, because of prejudices against them from the church, etc. So Druidic lore was made up of a number of verses memorized, and Caesar said it could take a number of years to finish their course of study. Sadly, no one certifiable ancient verse is known to have survived, even in translation, that's left from that time period. But again, it's lore that's passed down. So Caesar went on to state that all instruction was communicated orally, but for ordinary purpose. So what were their practices? So both Greek and Roman writers often made reference to the fact that the Druids practiced human sacrifice. Now, before anybody gets up in arms over this, we're going to delve into an explanation of that and how it was viewed. Human sacrifice isn't actually thought to have happened, but he recorded it as such. However, it could have been a misunderstanding, perhaps, of how the Druids dealt with someone when they crossed over and what they do with the body. It could have been seen as they were sacrificing them. But anyway, so according to Caesar, the sacrificial victims were often comprised of criminals, those accused of theft, etc. And if criminals were in short supply, then, quote, innocents would be used instead. A form of human sacrifice Caesar reported was burning alive of victims in a large wooden effigy, now often called the Wicker Man. There was actually a movie starring Nicolas Cage that really was about that practice still occurring. It was a horror movie type, whodunit type of film. Not his best work, but it definitely kind of put forward somewhat of the idea of them. Hey, Stace. So, Diordius Siculus, circa the 1st century BCE, was an ancient Greek historian. Now, he asserts that, Durcio's in chat. Hi, Durcio. Now, he asserts that sacrifice was acceptable to the Celtic gods, had to be attended by a druid because they were intermediaries between people and the divinities. So they were kind of seen like, go-betweens as far as having, basically they were seen to be gifted and be able to divine, do divination things, prophecies, etc. So kind of how the Catholic Church looks at the Pope today with regards to them being like, God's right-hand man type of thing here on earth. The Druids were seen to have those types of qualities to them back then, where they would be present in order to pass on prophecies, etc., or information that was said to come from the gods. So exactly, Marianne. So he said of the importance of prophets in a Druidic ritual, quote, down there, these men predicted the future by observing the flights and calls of birds and by the sacrifice of holy animals, all orders of society in their power. And in very important matters, they prepare a human victim by plunging a dagger into his chest, by observing the way his limbs convulse as he falls, and the flushing of his blood. They are able to read the future. Now, to me, what all that sounds a lot like is, wasn't it really? I never heard of it being made in 1975 with Christopher Lee. Huh, interesting. I'll have to look that up. Didn't realize that the movie was a remake with Nicolas Cage in it. It sounds like with these human sacrifices, especially in using criminals, were they using the criminals as human sacrifices as punishment for their crimes, perhaps, although because they're still willing to go to, quote, innocents, i.e., probably virgins, whatever, or younger people in place of criminals if they happen to be in short supply or something, lends kind of a question of whether or not they did actually perform human sacrifice for the purpose of communing with the gods or making an offering. So that part, it's kind of sketchy information. Aw, well, much love to Kaylee. Love to her too. Sorry, put that back. So now there were mass graves found in Western Europe that provided evidence that human sacrifice in a ritual context were performed by the Iron Age Celts, which was about 2,000 years ago that this was going on. So, and that's actually during the Iron Age / Bronze Age was where it's thought that the Druids were very active within their own societies and well known of as far as a group of people. However, their populations, etc., the allowance of that belief system waxed and waned from thereafter. But at that point in time, it seems, I think, that it was kind of like the height of their culture. So it's important to note that the interpretation of things by the Greeks and Romans were open to interpretation itself because they were known to project what they thought of as barbarian traits onto foreign people. This is in addition to Druids, including Christians and Jews as well, that they would do that for. Hey, Karen. So it wasn't limited to just Druids that they took that stance with, but they took note of it because they looked down on the Druids as being barbarians because they weren't Christian or heathens, much like, you know, a lot of modern Christians can view that stuff as, you know, it's oops, sorry, I'm trying to check my battery power here. And I don't want to stop the feed. And I just paused it. 78%. Okay. Just want to make sure my battery's still good. There we go. So this allowed them to continue seeing themselves, like Greeks and Romans, as being superior over others and better than everyone else. And of course, their whole methodology was divide and conquer, empower, and all that stuff. So having that in at the expense of others, them. So, hi, Derek. Welcome. So the modern day experts feel that Druids were more like great philosophers, and the idea of Druids being involved in human sacrifice was more like Roman propaganda, which it may have been, but it's kind of viewed like that anyway by most modern scholars in examining the former written stuff, like I said, from the Greek and Romans writing it, and it's going to be from their perspective of viewing them as barbaric, when in the complete opposite was actually the case, where they were not barbarians. They were very earth-based in their beliefs and the connectivity to nature, and natural healings, and the energies of every living thing has a connectivity, much like modern day Wicca and pagan kind of stems from those belief systems as its foundation. So the Druidic philosophy regarding that, there was a gentleman by the name of Alexander Cornelius Polyhistor, who was from the 1st century BCE, and he was a Greek scholar enslaved by the Romans during the Mithratic War and was taken to Rome to be a tutor, actually. Welcome home, Natalie. And he ended up going on after he was released from being enslaved to remain being a Roman citizen, and he went on to do writings and teaching and became more of a scholar within that society. He just kind of stayed where he was. So he he referred to the Druids definitely as philosophers, and he called their doctrine of the immortality of the soul and reincarnation being Pythagorean in nature. So in Pythagorean ideology, basically Pythagoras had created basically numerology using and finding the connectivity between math and the real world, what's around us, and shapes and geometry and numbers and how it all interrelates. So the Pythagorean theory really is kind of the basis and foundation for what the form of divination thought to be numerology. So interesting little factoid there. So Caesar actually made similar observations. Quote, with regard to their actual course of study, the main object of all education is, in their opinion, to imbue their scholars with a firm belief in the indestructibility of the human soul, which, according to their belief, mainly passes after death from one tenement to another. For by such doctrine alone, they say, which robs death of all of its terrors, can the highest form of human courage be developed. Subsidiary to the teachings of their main principle, they hold various lectures and discussions on the stars and their movements, on the extent and geographical distribution of the earth, on the different branches of natural philosophy, and on the many problems that are connected with a religion, end quote. And that was by Julius Caesar from De Bella Gallico, the volume 6, 14. Yes, we do love our family here. So this was meant to be a piece, or is seen as the chief piece of propaganda, which was his account of the Gallic Wars, meant to inform Rome of its progress. But it is at least validating that the Druids were scholarly, and that they studied stars and the movements of the stars and the distribution of the land masses of the earth and so forth. So that, at least, even though it may have been seen as propaganda, it still is promoting that the Druids were bloody brilliant people who were interested in enhancing one's mind and growing themselves spiritually, educationally, and emotionally. Yeah, we do tend to be very high frequency in here, Derek. That is a thing. There are a lot of high vibrational people in the group. So female Druids. Now, this is interesting. So the Irish have several words for female Druids, like Bandrui, meaning woman Druid, quite simple translation. And they often shared similar religious and cultural roles as the male Druids did. Yes, we are definitely family in here. Hey, all letting you know I watch you on TV, YouTube, having problems with my phone. No worries, Nancy. That's why I let people know that if they do have issues with Facebook, we can be seen on YouTube. I just can't monitor both chats at once is all. So I tend to stay, because normally if I go on YouTube and I let people know that's where I'm going to be watching chat at, then everybody from the group goes over to YouTube, and that's who's active in the chat there. So I may as well just do it in the group and have it be easier. Okay. Excuse me. We are soul family, absolutely, Sandy. Okay, so again, the females often shared similar religious and cultural roles as the male Druids. And according to classical authors, the Galazania were virgin priestesses of the, and forgive any butchering I might do, but Elide sign of Pointe du Raz, Finisterre, Western Brittany, Probably completely butchered that, and my apologies, but I am not familiar with that language or the pronunciation. And upon trying to look it up, which if I happen to encounter a word I don't know, I will go online and say, how do you pronounce this? And they have little verbal things that will say the word for you. Wasn't finding that last night, so just kept going. Now, their island was forbidden to men, which is interesting, but they'd come to the mainland to meet their husbands. They were both counselors and practitioners of the healing arts. And there were said to be 9 of them that lived on this island, which is interesting because not many times throughout history do you find a female dominated, I mean, in this case, it's kind of a self-isolation on this island, but it's by choice, and it's a female-dominated society, mini society, if you will. And in a male-dominated world, that was not a common thing to have happen, but they were respected as such, and it wasn't violated. So you were forbidden to go to that island under any reason. I'm not sure like what punishment you would suffer if you were found there, but they would go to the mainland and pick their husbands, and they stayed isolated. We do adopt anybody as long as they're not a jerk. They're allowed in. So they were they believed them to have gifts to, quote, rouse the sea and wind by their incantations, to turn themselves into whatsoever animal form they may choose, to cure diseases which are common, or among others are incurable, to know what is to come and to foretell it. They are, however, devoted to the service of voyagers only, who have set out with on no other errand other than to consult them. And that was by that Pomponius Mela. Yeah, that's my spiritualized stance on that, as long as you're not a jerk. And so again, Pomponius was really the first one to kind of be supportive of them in a positive light, to recognize their strength. Gabriel, what do you mean, Derek? Clarify? So their decline of the Druids. Now, according to Pliny the Elder from the 70s current era, it was Emperor Tiberius who ruled from 14 to 37 current era. Those are the years that they were in existence, that introduced laws actually banning Druidic practices and other native soothsayers and healers. So because, again, Christianity had kind of taken firm root here, and if you were anything other than Christian, you got persecuted. So they banned them from their own practices. And again, hence where many of them went into practice secretively, much like witchcraft was throughout the European countries. Witches were persecuted to such a degree. I mean, we make a big deal of the Salem witch trials here in the United States, when in reality, the number of people who were killed there in numbers into the multiple millions of people. And so that's pretty mild to, the 20 to 30 that were accused and were killed here in the United States for it. And it really did come over from Europe to the United States in order to kind of get running wild here. But so it started with this, modern pagans, witches, and Wicca can be traced back to stemming their belief systems at its core foundation with Druidic practices. So again, they kind of took to having to practice in secret. So other accounts that were by Suetonius's writings in the 2nd century of the current era claim that Rome's first emperor Augustus, who ruled from 27 BCE to 14 CE, and he decreed that no one could be both a Druid and a Roman citizen. So And Rome, of course, by that time had encompassed a really large area of land ownership, taken over other societies and cultures and called it their own, and stomped out anything that didn't fit their mold. They were also responsible for demolishing, like, the temples of Delphi with the seers there. Where are you going? I'm just a stepladder, I swear, that cat. You know, they're the ones who stamped that out. And again, those practices could be seen to be traced back to Druid priestesses who held themselves in that, where they were, you know, what they received was messages from the gods that they would then pass on to whomever needed the information. So again, it was banned. You couldn't be both a Druid and a Roman citizen, and otherwise you were shunned and kicked out, basically, or put to death if you were found to be practicing it. So in the later Emperor Claudius, who ruled from 41 to 54 CE, passed a law that banned all Druidic religious practices as a whole across the board. Oh, thanks, Annette. Yeah, just came out a little bit darker looking on camera anyway than it actually is in person, but when I colored it last. But it's all good. Blends in. So Druidism versus Christianity. Now, this history of this runs so far back, where they were again condemned and criticized by Christians and Christian leaders of the time. And there's a hell of a story I've got in here that is absolutely ludicrous. Just imagining this play out. Just wait, like, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's kind of mind-blowing to think that this was allowed to happen. But we'll get to that in a minute. So with the Christianization of Wales by the 7th century, Druidism openly became extinct for all intents and purposes. Sure, there were many who still obviously practiced in secrecy and met secretly in order to protect that stuff. It's natural. Well, yeah, we know better than that, Marianne. We know how gray I am, but you guys have seen my roots before. Yeah, I said that by the time I turn 50, I will reevaluate coloring my hair, whether to continue it or not. That deadline's approaching here in June, and I'm kind of like, I don't know if I'm ready to stop yet. Anyway, yeah, that's a whole nother subject, isn't it? So again, by the time with the Christianization of Wales, by the 7th century, Druidism openly became extinct because of their laws passed that practicing that Druidism beliefs in general and their religious practices were banned, and that you couldn't be, you know, both a Christian and a Druid by their outlook on it. So Philip Freeman, who is a classics professor, finds, and he's a more modern person, obviously, he finds later references to dryads spelled, you know, like in the way we think of the word as being like a nature spirit, right? Fight aging the entire journey. Oh my goodness, could you imagine me showing up on camera with purple hair or something? Yeah, yeah. This is as close as I can get to what my natural color was, so at least by doing it myself. Yeah, I don't know about the extreme coloring things. So Philip Freeman, who is a classics professor, he finds later references to dryads, which he translates as druidesses, meaning, you know, women who are druids. And in the 4th century CE, writings known as Historia Augusta has 3 short passages involving Gaulish women, and points out that, quote, in all of these, the women may not be direct heirs of the Druids who were extinguished by the Romans, but in any case, they do show that the Druidic function of prophecy continued among the natives in Roman Gaul. Female, end quote, by the way, female druids are mentioned in later Irish mythology. Further historic mentions of druids is the British leader Vortigern was excommunicated by Germanus, who had been a bishop in the late antique Gaul. So Vortigern then invited 12 druids to assist him, and that's well documented. So in the lives of saints, martyrs, and so forth, druids are seen as magicians and diviners, tutors, etc. So, excuse me, a couple minutes ago I mentioned this funny event that occurred. Well, I'm sure it was not amusing at all at the time, but it's how it played out. So now get this as a name. It kind of sets up the story, I think. I will have my hair every color before I die. Well, you go, girl, and I admire your willingness to do that. There we go. I'm trying to get my battery amount there. I knew what you meant. So here's the guy's name who perpetrated this ridiculous event. So Sulpicius Severus of Martin of Tours was the third bishop of Tours and a Christian saint in France. Now, it kind of is only seen as being a saint in France only. It's not like a global acceptance of him as a saint, but he's held in very high esteem in France. Okay, Sandy, sorry you're having issues. Sulpicius Severus. So apparently, Martin of Tours encountered a peasant funeral procession, and they carried the body in a winding sheet. You already did mermaid hair? That I can't picture you having. So this guy encountered a funeral procession, going down the road, carrying a body in a winding sheet. Now, to me, I picture this as being that the person was wrapped in a sheet to cover their body after they died. He mistook it for some druidic rite of human sacrifice, quote, because it was the custom of the Gaelic rustics in their wretched folly to carry about through the fields the images of demons veiled with a white covering, end quote. Sorry you keep freezing. I didn't know you were missing your sunglasses, but so and another way if it happens to freeze, try pulling down at the top of the page, press and pull it down on the screen. Sometimes that can refresh the page without going all the way out. So for those who might have missed it because you're having issues. So he saw this funeral procession. They carried the body in a winding sheet, and welcome, Ronnie. How are you, lady? Which I take to be just a body wrapped in a sheet that wound around a body. And he mistook it for some druidic rite of human sacrifice, quote, because it was the custom of the Gaelic rustics in their wretched folly to carry about through the fields the images of demons veiled with a white covering, end quote. So he stops the procession by raising his pectoral cross. So a pectoral cross is those large crosses they would wear on their chest over their pectoral muscle. So he raises his cross up. He stops the procession from going forward by raising his cross at them. Quote, upon this, the miserable creatures might have been seen at first to become stiff like rocks. Next, as they endeavored with every possible effort to move forward, but were not able to take a step farther, they began to whirl themselves about in the most ridiculous fashion until not able any longer to sustain the weight, they set down the dead body, end quote. Then, discovering his error, that it was a funeral procession, Martin raised his hand again to let them proceed. What an ass. Just saying. Quote, the uh, I'm not sure how to pronounce this one, but hagiographer. Now, they are ones that write in a adultery way, according to the dictionary, about someone else, and writes about the saints as well. Quote, thus, he points out, he both compelled them to stand when he pleased and permitted them to depart when he thought good, which is basically what happened. But how ridiculous, in order to stop a funeral procession because thinking that they were demons dancing around. Really? Really? And then once he realized that, hey, they're carrying a dead body, they're not a human sacrifice, then oh, well, okay, it's okay, you can pass. Like, I mean, what of all things to be remembered for? I don't think I'd want to be remembered as that. Your lag is annoying. Sorry, guys, you're having trouble. If you need to go to YouTube, just let me know, and I can change that tablet to go over to YouTube instead. It was a bishop, Tanya, in that area of France, and so he held that power, basically. And he's now seen as a saint in France. Now, not globally in the Catholic faith, he's not accepted as such, but in France, he's held in very high esteem. Yeah, okay. So, hey, Terry. Later on, there were later revivals of Druidism throughout history. Things started shifting, and by 18th century England and Wales, they experienced renewed interest in the Druids. So from around 1909, there was a George Watson McGregor Reed, founded the ancient Druid order. Oh, very much, Tanya. Like I said, completely an ass. And power tripping, basically. But because Druidic practices had been banned, he thought he was doing God's work, I'm sure, but just ridiculous. So this George Watson McGregor Reed founded the ancient Druid order, which the initiated members are then called companions. Now, meditation is a key activity amongst them. They're still in operation today. They're quite big, actually, from my understanding. They're very similar in nature to, as far as their setup and secrecy of their internal practices, are very similar to how Freemasons are, I guess. They do outward celebrations every year at key points, but the internal structure isn't like free for all, well open, well documented, etc. But I did see kind of a layout on a page that documented like who occupied what role and the hierarchy that existed, which is very similar to Freemasonry in that way. Sure, he didn't know we would remember him for his dumbassery. And that's what I'm saying, like, of all things to be remembered for, but he's considered a saint in France. Like, why? I don't get that one. So, to the ancient Druid order, meditation is a key activity, and discussions cover personal experiences are taken into account. Yeah, exactly. There is similarities. The Freemasons they claim that they are a very Christianized group of people and that they are in support of one another, which were essentially Masons who built things and who would travel from place to place to assure that they had a safe place to stay in whatever area they traveled to, that they could identify fellow Freemasons in a certain area and stay with them for the duration of the job or whatever, or before continuing on their travels, and receive food and safe place to sleep for the night or a few days, whatever, before moving on. But they did very much have, like, I've seen their Bible, and it's very much dedicated to philosophy to a degree, but promoting the Christian standpoint of things. So there are some differences between them, but the structure of this ancient Druidic order that was created in the 18th century is set up similarly to how they set up their hierarchy and membership stuff. So differences in beliefs, but similar structure. So they worked with personal experiences as well as biology, mythology, poetic, political, philosophical, astrology, etc., those types of subjects in general. And they felt that direct experiences are more important than book learning is, which I resonate with that. They held public ceremonies at the equinoxes, both spring and fall, and one during the summer solstice. And it would be the location or the time of the events could vary. They also do ceremonies by Stonehenge each solstice as well, which has been very well documented that they still take place. Initiated members have very distinct white robes that they wear and like cowls on their head, similar to what a nun would wear, but they're white. And they have the robes and stuff that connotates that they're in this association. But and they do ancient ceremonies, or said to be ancient ceremonies, honoring the spirits of Stonehenge and the energy associated with the equinoxes and the solstices. So the organization is still, like I said, active today. Now, forwarding on to Romanticism era, Druids ended up in various operas and plays being mentioned, mostly is seen as prophetic seers in said opera or play. And mainly in the 1800s in Britain, this took place, but it was still like on the fringe of culture, but it was still, they were solely really seen as being a seer, like what we would call a psychic medium today. Be able to predict the future, that type of stuff. Then we go into Neo-Druidism, which neo indicating new, a new form of Druidism. So various archaeologists and authors have cornered off on their particular viewpoints of this. Everybody has their own view and version of who the Druids were according to the various texts that do still exist today that were written by the Greeks and Romans. They vary on their viewpoints and stance on it. None are really in agreement on one universal theme for the Druids. It's very, again, individualized. Sounds like what the Knights Templar wore, white robes with hoods. Yeah, except they didn't have the red cross on their fronts like the Knights Templar did. And the Knights Templar were very much Christian-based organization. Now, Druidry, aka Druidism, is the modern movement that promotes harmony and a reverence for the natural world and a respect for all beings. KKK. Yeah, well, they may have copied what the original garb was, but I mean, even today, individual practitioners may wear a robe that's kind of earth toned and that type of thing in order to go out and do a specific ceremony or spell, whatever you choose to call it, in your individual practices. But only that organization wore that full garb to indicate that they're part of that ancient order of Druids organization. But yeah, there are similarities definitely in the except the KKK, of course, wore a face covering. I've seen women today dressed in all white as a nun. I have no idea of their doctrine. I almost think that it's too bad Yvonne Kaluuya wasn't in here tonight, because she actually had been in training to become a nun at one point in her life. I believe that when they're all white for a nun, it's that they haven't been fully initiated into that sisterhood. Yes, novices. Thank you. I was trying to think of the word as I was speaking, Chris. That they haven't been fully, integrated in as a full-fledged nun yet to take in their vows and so forth. So that's what I think those are. But the garb is similar, except it's just all white, and they had belted clothes, but very similar. Different colors mean one is a day off. What do you mean by a day off? As in, like, they didn't have to be practicing that day, or they're having a day off, or what do you mean, Tanya? That's what our nuns told me. Oh, okay. Nowadays, the KKK wears khaki uniforms. Well, that's just lovely. You know, they're modernizing. How great. Sorry, but not a supporter, obviously. So, let's see. So, modern druidry or druidism is a modern movement that promotes harmony and a reverence for the natural world and a respect for all beings. All modern pagan religions are forms of modern druidity, although most early druids more closely related to Christianity. Although with those, I'm undecided as to whether they openly stated that they were Christianized in order to kind of save their lives, but still kind of practice in secret. You know, when I see them, they had on uniforms, boots, and wore berets. Lovely. Well, that's all right. They can have their little happy society hating people and do it in some other island far away from other people. That's my theory on that one. So again, I kind of wonder as far as like that part of the research where it's saying that they were more closely related to Christianity because it was, I think, more to avoid persecution, and that they didn't still practice in secrecy, much like witches had to do as well. Like I said, I think there's a definite connection there. So probably openly stating I'm Christian or they're aligned with Christianity and integrated it, even though they really didn't. Although it's interesting to note that there are very definite things that are pointed to being pagan in nature or druidic in nature that Christianity adopted as a means of trying to get them to convert. They are notorious for having done that with different, even Egyptians, culture, etc., taking certain aspects of it, putting a Christian twist on it, whether it was a celebration, a holiday like Yule, things like that, and calling it Christmas, but integrating parts of it into the traditions surrounding it in order to get them to more easily integrate and accept it as a new way of thinking about it, but having it still be the core root of their own belief system. So a lot of Christianized beliefs have their basis in Druidism, and as in its earliest forms, even like, you know, coming up on the first day of spring, the celebration is Ostara, which is celebrating the renewal of life in springtime, and Christians integrated that, and even in Easter practices with the reincarnation of well, not reincarnation, but the ascension of Christ and so forth, but also in Easter eggs and things of that nature. Eggs represent new life, and rabbits represent procreation. So those aspects were integrated into the holiday celebrations for those things. So just as a side note, that's where they came from originally. The days of the weeks were actually taken from the Vikings, as well as some Egyptian aspects mixed in just for good measure. So it could be said that Christianity really is a mishmash too of belief systems, but they still promoted it as solely their own. But anyway, I think that them, you know, aligning or saying that they were more closely related to Christianity was more self-serving in order to hang on to their foundation of beliefs, without being persecuted for still being practicing Druids because it had been banned and outlawed. So modern Druids has the core principle of respect and a veneration of nature, along with veneration of ancestors, especially those belonging to prehistoric societies. Now, the modern version of Druidism really began in the 18th century, and the formation of those fraternal organizations were modeled, it's said again, after Freemasonry. But as far as like the ancestral worship, it wasn't so much about one's individual ancestors by name. It was them as like a collection of ancestors that are surrounding you at all times, empowering you and helping guide you on your path. So they were venerated, held in high esteem, because of their strength in numbers and as a collection of people who walk before you on this path is really what it was. They used to have a lot of, yeah, I've heard about that, especially in the southern states, Renee, regarding the KKK and stuff, about having their little rallies and, yeah, trying to recruit people. One must remember no one is born racist, it's a taught thing. So, what kind of a parent are you? In other words, you're teaching that and promoting that. It's my say so on that, but yeah, that's why I mentioned southern states, Renee. I don't remember specifically what state you're in, but I know you're in the South. So they aim to imitate the Iron Age priests, although little factual information is known about them because, again, much of it was just oral history passed down, and there is no written documentation that survives written by them, and there may never have been. You're in Arkansas? Gotcha. So it was oral information was passed down and did survive, obviously, to some degree. So they aim to imitate that. And some more recent groups have merged both Druid and Christian beliefs into their own personal practices and identify as Christo-Druid, which, again, is more like private practitioners overall. KKK are now wearing Hawaiian shirts. Wow. Well, aren't they special? And as far as the different kinds of druids out there, you have everything. Oh, you're joking. Okay. It's like, really? Okay. I'm a literal, my brain works literally, Karen. So I process things as I see it. So I'm like, oh, okay. There's also Zen druids and Hasidic druids, Barangay order of druids. Now, these people took their elements from the sci-fi TV shows like Star Trek and Babylon 5 in order to make their organization, hence the Barangay, which are a race of people in the Star Trek world. My father was a racist fucktard. It always made me sick to my stomach. Well, I'm glad you're not in that because, yes, Hawaiian shirts, I'm not joking. I wish I was joking, you said. Gotcha. I misread that. Sorry. There's also Celtic Christianity, but overall it's now more associated with the modern pagan movement. And some even draw on legends of King Arthur in order to incorporate into their belief system of being able to have a utopian society of, respect in learning and having that connectivity to all living beings, that all life is sacred and important. And that's what's focused on. I hate skin haters. What's inside that counts. Absolutely, Marianne. So modern druids are often critical of mainstream society and feel it's governed by consumerism, exploitation, both of people and the environment, and a supremacy of technology. They seek a more natural way of living and pursue a sense of cosmic belonging, which is more polytheistic in nature. I spy on them the only reason I know. Gotcha, Karen. Natalie says, I brought religion to my kids as a basis of belief, but both my boys have done a bunch of research and have rejected organized religion. Oh. I'm totally cool with that. They have taught me so much in return. Well, good for you. Yeah, no, I used to have a big poster that was door size that I hung in a very visual place. When you walked into my apartment, it would kind of jump out at you. And it was a black poster with white writing that said racism sucks. For anyone to come in to know exactly where I stood, because my area has a lot of them in there too, and rednecks that are, I think that they're all that. So, yeah. So there is a Druid's prayer by an 18th century druid, Lolo Morganway. Quote, grant, O goddess, thy protection, in protection, strength, and in strength, understanding, knowledge, and in knowledge, the knowledge of justice, and in the knowledge of justice, the love of it, and in the love of it, the love of all existences, and in the love of all existences, the love of the goddess and all goodness, end quote. Love it. Good. I don't care what color you are. How you treat me is how I treat you. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated. So how would they like it if they were persecuted and, you know, had horrible hate crimes done against them just because of what they look like? It wouldn't go over well, I'm sure. Now, there's also the concept of Awen. And this concept is of spirit or divinity, which inspires poetry and art and is believed to be a flowing spirit given by the deity. Now, Awen is evoked by either chanting the word Awen or AIO together 3 times in order to shift one's consciousness of those involved. The word Awen comes from the Welsh and Cornish terms meaning inspiration. Interesting. It would be interesting to try that and see if your inspirational juices, so to speak, flow more freely. Whether you draw or you write or do poetry or you paint, make artwork, whatever, it would be interesting to try that to see, does that shift your consciousness into a different place? So again, there's also, say the word again, Awen, AWEN, and it's the Welsh and Cornish term meaning inspiration. So you invoke Awen by either chanting the word Awen or saying AIO 3 times in order to shift your consciousness of those involved in doing it. Yeah, AIO is the, you can do that or say the word Awen. You're very welcome, Derek. So again, with the ancestors, there's a huge belief in them as all. Well, I heard it wrong. Oh, well, not really, because it is AIO is another way of doing it, Sandy. So you're not really wrong. It is, you can do either one and it's supposed to work. Yeah, Awen is just, it does feel strong, doesn't it? So again, with regards to the ancestors, some regard them as a group rather than specific individuals, like a collective, if you will. So much like how the teachings of Michael, it's a collection of soul beings coming through, giving us information, or in the Abraham Hicks material, also a collection of soul beings coming through. And so that's very much like that, to where it is a connection to a group, a collective of energy. I'm not really focused on the word and in tune with it, Tanya. I'm more like, I'm not tuned in at the moment. So when I do my shows of any kind, my gifts are such that they're off if I'm not intently choosing to use them. So I'm just like an everyday person with no gifts. When I do stuff like that, anything spiritual, I can talk about it, but it doesn't have the same impact on me as if I've got my switch turned on, if that makes sense. So I'm presenting the information, but I'm not tuned into the energy of it. But it is something I would be interested to try and see, because there are different forms of, whether it was back in the day, once in a while I'd get inspired to write a poem, or I would draw, even though I'm not a brilliant artist by any means, but, I would love to sketch and enjoy that. So doing something like that with intention would be interesting to see if I felt inspired to suddenly get an idea for a poem, or to go forward and start sketching something and to see if it changes what comes through. So yeah, that would be interesting to try it just to see. Derek's saying he feels different for having said it. So it feels like there's energy around the word. That's all I can say without being tuned in. So, and the modern Druids perceive the connection with ancestors. It's more of the land versus of the blood. So it's a connectivity to all living beings that came before you in any form that, you know, is there around you. That energy surrounds you at all times, more so than my Aunt Bess 3 generations removed. You know, it's not as specific as that. Thank you, Sandy. You like this platform much better. In terms of what, Ronnie? Like the Soma Fusion platform? Let me know what you're talking about, if that's what you're referencing. So Druidic groups are known as, quote, groves, and it's in like a movement of trees, literally like a grove of trees, and that's how they consider. And the larger groups are called orders. So each grove has their own unique way of conducting rituals and ceremonies. Get you by yourself. Well, yeah, that's the thing, is that in here, Katie gives me the flexibility to do that. So I don't have to be on YouTube or whatever like I was on Gurn. I can do it from the group, much like we used to do it before when I would just do the show solely in the Willows Bend. Now I'm still being broadcast around the world, but I'm in our chat. So let me check my battery. Okay, I have to change plugins soon here. So it's kind of, the groves are much, I guess, could be equated to like a witch's coven, to where you have a group of people who are like-minded getting together to conduct and learn more, to conduct rituals and ceremonies. But each coven can have its own slightly different set of beliefs to them, whereas larger groups that you can join, like the ancient Druidic order, they're considered an order versus being, you know, a small group of people. So there's not no set dress code for rituals in the Druidic movement. Some favor, like I said, earth tone rune robes that you can wear, or making, you know, like a flower headdress or whatever, not headdress, but kind of crown, if you will, and making offerings to the earth is also a big thing. So as you can see, the practices vary greatly amongst those in the modern neo-Druidic movement, reflecting individual beliefs, but as a common belief always is in spirits, nature, bonds, and ancestors. Those are the core foundations of modern Druidism. Now, they don't focus as much on the gaining of knowledge and studying and wisdom and so forth as ancient Druids seem to be, with philosophy and learning religion and different things about the world. But they do focus more on the spiritual side, nature bonds, connectivity to all living things, and the ancestor energy. There's a grove like that is in Sedona, Arizona, that the presidents go to. Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I've heard of that, Sandy. I recently saw a documentary on that, and it's a very secretive thing. I would not really say it's Druidic, but more like networking within privacy. There's a very, very strict privacy code for that. Now, I have heard that they do use sort of a some sort of an effigy, meaning like a human-shaped figure of that it's made. It's not like a living person, they hope, that it gets sacrificed during their ceremonies. But beyond that, like, there's individual, like, class type of groupings. I guess it's very secretive, and there's not a lot of solid information about it. But yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Is that why hippies did that in the 60s with peace and love? I would say that it's related to that, Tanya. It does kind of relate back to the modern Druidic beliefs of that, you know, peace and love type of stuff. It could be linked to it. they probably wouldn't have called themselves that at the time, but being a flower child, if you will, or a tree hugger, yeah, that very much is indicative of the druidics link to nature and all living things. And I've often said before that my mom, when she was raising me, especially my early years, was very much more of a flower child and a tree hugger. And then she had gotten named as a medicine woman, and I was being taught to be her successor, to take over for her when she was no longer here. But so I have that mishmash of teachings, but they're all interrelated. It's just from maybe different labels associated with them, but they're still really the same idea. Tree humper, I don't know that one, Nanette. Hugger, hug as in hug, tree hugger, not humper. You got bigger issues if you're doing that type of thing. That's funny. Wore daisy chains in my hair and hug trees too. Well, good for you, Sandy. Yeah, I have a couple crowns that I wear that they're not made of flowers, but I have one that if you guys remember from my my Halloween costume from a couple years ago, where I dressed up as Mother Nature, and I made a floral headpiece that I wore with the costume. Oh, hugger, hugging, tree hugging. Yeah, I think that you might need a therapist if you're a tree humper. Just saying. That's going to be like a Willows been classic now, I think. We love you, Annette. We really do. I'm sorry if I didn't speak it clearly enough. I'm probably going to giggle about it for the rest of the night. So thank you for making me smile. Hey, Mary. So again, it's very, it's gotten modernized in its beliefs, much more. It could be painful, Sandy. Much more modernized by modern integration of slightly different tweaking of viewpoints into it, and even modern witchcraft, whether you consider yourself a pagan or a Wiccan, it has its origins in druidic practices. Oh, thank you. Yeah, there's pictures of it somewhere. I still have them, I think, in my tablet. I don't remember if I put them in the album section of the new Willows Bend group, but yeah, that would go beyond being a nature lover. Yeah. Big time splinters. Yeah. That's something we did without proper body gear. So basically, there we are. That's topic of druids as a whole. As you can see, it's kind of had its own metamorphosis over the millennia, from what it originated as to what it's become now. It is funny. Like I said, I'm probably gonna be laughing about that throughout the night, but from a positive place. I'm not making fun of you. I probably just didn't enunciate it clearly enough. My apologies with that one, but yeah. So there we have it. That is the topic of druids and the history as that it's known to be or thought to have been. Again, it's all kind of from different perspectives because of who was writing it. The Greek and Romans were thought to have written it from a propaganda standpoint versus, to really have them seen as barbarians, although there were many of those people who wrote about them very clearly stating just how in-depth they were and very learning oriented. But again, it was orally given. It wasn't written down and passed down. So please don't, Marianne. So topics to vote on for next week. Our list is getting skinny, I will say. We're down to, I think, 4 different topics to vote on. So if anyone has any suggestions, whether you are listening out in the general population, got a Woody, that's funny. Whether you're listening in the general population, if you have a suggestion for a topic, one can message me on Facebook under Donna Hawk, 2 separate words, Who Walks the Land, 1 word, Gorton. It's just how Facebook made me spell it out in order to accept it. Hawk Who Walks the Land, simply my medicine woman name. So that's my login. So you can message me there, or message me on my Beyond the Veil page on Facebook, or you can ask to join my group, the Willows Spend, on Facebook, and then put a comment in there about what the, a suggestion for a topic you'd like to see covered. Because with this show, it's audience driven, obviously, by me following my comments. That I allow the audience to choose a topic each week, and then I go and research it and present it, and the following week and research the crap out of it, basically. So yeah, my hearing's off. I'm moderately deaf on both sides. Has the 5th dimension, not in and of itself, Karen, as a topic. It's been talked about as far as what the 5th dimension is, but not in depth. If you want it on the list, I can put it in there. I'm on a farm, who cares, right? Mind control, we can add these to the list here. So let's see. Oh. Hang on. I keep forgetting that I really can't write well yet, holding the pen normally, and I keep going to pick it up that way. Yet it doesn't, still hurts to do it that way, so I have to hold it differently, which is where I was kind of struggling a bit with my notes to figure out what I wrote, because it changes my handwriting. So mind control, the 5th dimension. Okay. With new discoveries, that would be cool to add. That would be cool to add. Next week's topic, tree humpers. Oh God. You know what? There is probably somebody out there somewhere, or it's a obscure law in some state that it makes it illegal to hump trees. I don't know, but it's something that probably wouldn't surprise me. With some of the laws that are out there on the books, they're crazy at times. And somebody would have had to have done it in order for it to become a law. So that could be something to look up online to see, is it a law somewhere? Especially regarding like the ancient redwood forest and stuff. Oh Lord. Okay, so with that, let's do the vote for next week. We have Thunderbirds, Tulpas, Aniwatok Dome. Can you imagine that ER bird? You know what? For what they see in the emergency room visits regarding the different things people have stuck in their orifices, everything from Barbie dolls to animals. Yeah, not good. Yeah, absolutely. It would be fun research, Natalie. So next week, we have Thunderbirds, Tulpas. We have Aniwatok Dome. For those who are unfamiliar, it is a dome that the United States government created to, quote, cover up all of the debris from nuclear testing in the Pacific Ocean, which is leaking currently into the oceans and out on the surface as well. And they displaced people to build this thing who still have not been allowed to go back because the radiation levels are way too high. And it's kind of a scary topic. Light bulbs, I've seen the x-rays. Oh yeah, no, I mean, I've seen some of them online too, and it's like, holy cow, they'd put what, where? So we have the Thunderbirds, Tulpas, Aniwatok Dome, the Knights Templar, and also Mind Control and the 5th Dimension. So, and if anybody has any new topics, one can hit me up on Facebook Messenger under Donna Hawk Who Walks the Land Gorton, or on my page Beyond the Veil, or in my group The Willows Bend on Facebook. Those are the main places to find me. Yeah, whole Barbie dolls. Yep. You want to know about the cover up and the Aniwatok Dome? Gotcha, Natalie. And that says Thunderbirds. Sandy says 5th Dimension. Thunderbirds and Tulpas, says Aaron. Mary says the Knights Templar. Tanya says the fifth dimension. Chris says Thunderbirds. Sandy says Knights Templar. Oh, you know, it's just astounding. Some of the videos I've seen online are just mind-boggling. Hey, Faith, I didn't even see you in here, honey. Karen and Faith say fifth dimension. Ronnie says tulpas, too. Thunderbirds are knights, says Amanda. Gotcha. I'm surprised Stacy hasn't piped in yet with your parents' votes. Mind control, says Marianne. Let's see, there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. What's the matter? Oh, what's the matter? You all right? Are you okay? What was that about? Huh? You all right? Or Knights Templar, okay. Or fifth dimension, says Terry. What's the matter? You all right? Yes. Oh dear. He's all right, baby girls. Nose nubbies, yes. That's how she gives kisses. She taps her nose to my nose. Medieval birth control. Ooh, that could be a topic to add. Medieval birth control. Got it. Stacy Kaminsky probably picked Thunderbirds or fifth, I would think. Or Knights Templar would be my guesses. But she also usually finds out what your parents are interested in and gives me their votes. I'm a little surprised that they don't come into chat anymore in here, because all they have to do is click on the picture and it opens up the chat and stuff. It's not hard, but she says that she normally puts it on her TV and then puts her phone or whatever near the TV to watch it. Let's see, hang on a second, guys, and I will catch up on chat. My 1 teacup's emptied. Some nights I don't know, I think I get dehydrated or something, or I'm just thirstier than others, so I get dry mouth more. I know it's been drier in here again with the furnace having to kick on more again now that winter's kind of come back a bit. Okay, let me see what I missed. Portals from around the world. We have covered portals before, but I mean, they all kind of function the same way. Now, there are energetic anomalies from around the world where there are different, like, magnetic poles in different areas and things of that nature that impact gravitational alignments and things. But as far as how they work, they kind of are all the same. A portal's still a portal. Does that make sense? Yeah, little girl's very much like she's like a child. She operates on a different frequency than a lot of cats do, and hence me thinking she's kind of on the autism spectrum on just how she processes stuff. She's as healed as I can get her to be. Tanya said, I had a dream or thought of shadow fairy. Is that a real thing or just something I brought in from a book? I have not specifically heard of a shadow fairy, but I've heard of dark fairies. So I don't know if that's the same. I know in 1800s they used those huge pennies for birth control. Oh, good Lord. We do know her too well, absolutely. And for men, yeah, the cod pieces. Snow again tomorrow. Oh, great. I'll check my forecast because I got to go to town tomorrow. And a hole is always a hole. Yeah. Hey, Aaron. You know what? You missed the entire thing, Aaron, and we are actually ending and doing the vote for next week. So you missed it, son. So speak now or everyone hold their peace on topics. And it looks like Fifth Dimension is won by one vote for next week. Let me circle that so I know what I'm doing. So you made it to 70. Oh wow, that must have been nice. Yeah, it's back in the 20s here in central New York. It's considered upstate New York, really, but I'm really in the middle of the state. Okay, so schedule of events coming up. So shadow fairies are a thing, are they? Like I said, I've heard of dark fae, but not like specifically fat shadow fairies. It'd be something I could look up for you though, or you could, Tanya, and just do a search for it and see what comes up. Finally one I voted on one. Well, eventually we get to most of the topics. I mean, unless a topic doesn't get voted on for like 2 or 3 weeks in a row, then I'll drop it off the list. Hey, Heather, same thing for you, sweetheart. We're just wrapping up and finishing voting and stuff for the week, so you kind of missed the show. So anyways, so schedule of events coming up the rest of this week. So Wednesday in the Willows Ben group of mine on Facebook, and this goes for the listeners if you care to join. Last week I started a book group of reading the Seth Speaks book, and that's at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So the next one will be Wednesday the 17th. And then on Friday, I'm in my Beyond the Veil page, 8 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to be doing readings in there Friday night. And I'm a psychic medium. I do oracle cards, all of that stuff. I know, Heather. I'm sorry you missed it. We always start at 8 p.m. Eastern time, sweetie. Whatever that translates into on your time zone. But yeah, it's always at 8 p.m. Yep, Mary came in late too. For once, Karen's not in a corner, so you won't have her to keep you occupied in there. So the readings on Friday and Beyond the Veil, and then Sunday the 21st is resuming Goddesses and Devils. Goddesses and Devils. And then back in here for Willows Ben Monday the 22nd. That's also at 8 p.m. Now Goddesses and Devils starts at 9 p.m. Eastern time, not 8 o'clock. But all of my personal shows are always starting at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And so next Monday will be the Fifth Dimension, will be the topic we're covering. So if anyone in the meantime has any of the topic ideas, whatever, message me and we'll add them to the list. I don't know why I can't find Stuff Speaks. It's available on Amazon, Natalie. You can enter it in there. Stuff Speaks, The Eternal Validity of the Soul is the name of the book. But even if you don't have the book, I'm reading each chapter, so you can be in there, and then we discuss it if there's any questions or whatever. And really, the first part of what I did this past week was like the introduction, the foundation of it, and like we started chapter 1 and 2, but it really hasn't gotten in-depth information yet. So you're still welcome to join and listen in, because that's why I'm reading it, is for those who don't have a copy, so I can also help people understand it if they have, struggle on a certain part of it or whatever. Everyone's still adjusting to the time change, yeah. Oh, no, Heather, we did already do the show, sweetheart. Sorry, but yeah, we just finished the show and we're just talking about what's coming up. Yeah, I started at 8 p.m. Eastern, so it's now 20 minutes to 10 p.m. my time. Got off late, that's why. Well, when you're working, that's different, Fear, Dorka, Shadow, or Dark Fairy. Like I said, I have heard of Dark Fairies, but not Shadow Fairies, but I'm sure it's kind of the same thing. No, she means the room for it. Oh, I can send you an invite to it, but all you have to do is when I start the room, an invite goes out for it, and in Messenger, it'll say want to join room, and you just jump in at that point. And Sandy, you should be getting your gift from the group, quote unquote, tomorrow or Wednesday, I believe it's supposed to arrive. So if you could please let me know that you got it okay, I would appreciate that. Yeah, like I said, it'll be in messengers where the notification happens. But yeah, I mean, even if you don't have the book, that's kind of why I'm reading out loud the chapter each week for those who don't have it, can't get it, whatever. It's definitely something that can enrich one's view on everything spiritual wise, because it's a soul entity coming through to teach us. So like, you can't get much more kind of spot on, if you will, than that. So it's definitely worth, I think, partaking in. Yeah, you're on video for, I mean, you can turn your camera off, and just listen, but yeah, you're on video. Thank you, Sandy. I appreciate letting me know. Yeah, she knows I'm talking about. I already messaged her letting her know, because I had to get her address, that, somebody wanted to give her a group, or give her a group, a group gift, say thank you to her. And yeah, Karen, like I said, same thing for you. You're welcome to join the book group on Wednesday night if you care to. We're not that far into it yet, and it's really more, and each week I'm going to do kind of a summary. Well, thank you for blessing us with your presence, Aaron. Jeez Louise. Love to you too. Go continue your lazy day. I'm going to give a little summary at the start of each book group to kind of just give a quick review of what was covered. So, it is kind of cool, Sandy, to get into a group chat with everybody and hang out. So, yeah, that's what we're doing. So anyways, that's kind of the upcoming schedule for everything. So next Monday, we'll be doing the fifth dimension as a topic. And so the book group is Wednesday nights, plural, until we're done at 8 p.m. Eastern time in a room in the group. So you go into the group, and it should say in your notifications, like in the Facebook notifications on your homepage, check your notifications, and it should say that Donna, or join Donna's room or something like that. And it's labeled as book group. So kind of it'll ask you if you do want to join, and you say yes, and then you come in. Absolute love to you guys as well. So Wednesday's the book club, book group, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Yes, I do take breaks during the reading. You're right, Sandy, to answer any questions and so forth, because if I'm reading, because of my hearing, I can't always tell if someone has something they want to say, as far as like flagging me or interrupting. So I pause periodically to make sure everyone's with me or doesn't have questions. So I do recommend having like a pen and paper handy. So if I touch on something you have a question about, you can ask when I take the pauses to see if everyone's with me. So Wednesday is the book group, Friday is the readings on Beyond the Veil page, Sunday Goddesses and Devils at 9 p.m. and then back in here Monday the 22nd at 8 p.m. So thank you guys all for coming. Much love and light to all of you, and for everybody who's listening out there on the Soma Fusion Network. Again, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us at oops, let me put my pen in there. You can find us on YouTube under Soma Fusion. You can on the Soma Fusion channel. You can find us online on the web at Soma Fusion. What is it? Soma-Fusion.com. And so we are available kind of anywhere you want to be, basically. So, and thank you to Katie for putting the show out there, and lots of love to her as well. So to all of you, I wish you all a blessed evening, and I will see you, those who are interested, Wednesday night for the Seth Speaks book group in the room in Willows Bend group. So if that makes sense to everybody, you can start a room within the group, which is what I did, and we can have everybody come in there on video chat who is interested and do the reading. So love to everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the night, guys. Love you all. Good night.